Welcome, Show 2, Gold and Black Live, and it's cold in here. We're not going to complain, but it's
I'll
actually
complain.
cold football.
I'm going to complain.
Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I shouldn't complain, but I still do, or whatever the song goes. But it is cold. It's a little bit of football weather here in West Lafayette for the season opener, home season opener tomorrow against Vandy. Kind of overcast, but it's going to be a nice day tomorrow, from what I understand. And that's your weather report for this show. But Tom Dienhart, Brian Neubert join me. Want to thank our sponsors, Triple X. On the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. Carrie and Greg Ayersman been great friends of the show. This is our 10th year. Brian and I have been doing this for 10 years, and Tom has only been doing it for a semester and a half, and it seems like 10 years. But John Basham, the good folks at Basham Reynolds, Hilton Garden Inn, when tomorrow's a big day, State HDI tonight, and State Farm agent Trent Johnson. Trent is myagent.com. And Tom, a lot of gnashing of teeth in Boilermaker country after last Friday night, Saturday morning, if you're in the Eastern time zones, fourth quarter, late third quarter meltdown. But have you not? It's a week later, a full week later. Do you think the Boilermakers are ready to respond tomorrow?
We'll see. Talking to Jeff Brom after practice Thursday, I asked him about the team's mindset, Alan. He says, all systems go, try to put it behind you, one-game season, as the cliche goes. So hopefully for Purdue's sake, they put it in the rearview mirror. A lot of talk about being more aggressive, moving forward, not just offensively, but also defensively as well. And also, Brom sort of talked more about playing more players, increasing the rotation. Anybody who watched the game thought that Purdue defense looked pretty worn down in the fourth quarter. I'm sure the altitude had something to do with that. Look for Purdue to try to play more guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball from front to back.
Yeah, Brian, you look at this in the lens of a week later. What's it mean, and is it one of these deals? If you get through and get back to your winning ways, all is forgotten and forgiven. Or how do you view this now?
Yeah, Purdue's got a pretty good track record the last 2 years under Jeff Brom of having that moment where it seems like the sky is falling down upon you.
Yeah.
Whether it was the 0-3 start last year, whether it was the year before that where they had to win out to go to a bowl game, and did. They've historically responded. Now, obviously, a 3-game losing streak wouldn't have been a 3-game losing streak if they did it every single time. But that they do have a track record here of when things seem bad, them not turning out to be as bad. And if you ask me, Purdue was good enough to win that game. I mean, obviously, all that went into Purdue being in position to make one play to win that game holds. So if you were good enough to be in that position, that means you're not bad. I think Purdue's got a lot going for it. I don't look at Purdue as profoundly different today than I did before the Nevada game. Just got to make one more play. You just have to do one more thing differently. The officials have to give you an interception. When you make an interception, you have to not fumble or drop a ball twice when it would have been first down in somebody else's territory. You cannot turn the ball over 5 times. I mean, obviously, things happen in football games, and Purdue was good enough to win that game. It just didn't. Sometimes you just lose.
Yeah.
Obviously that was a bad loss, the way it unfolded, the way it gets Purdue off to an auspicious start to its season. But sometimes you just lose. It doesn't mean you're bad. And I think Purdue just lost when it should have won.
Yeah, the 5 turnovers, Tom, you can't, we've talked about that from a historical perspective, and I don't know what it is on a national scale. On the Purdue scale, you don't win, Purdue has not won in that scenario over since we've been trying to track that. But any common thread or anything that you saw there that said, boy, this is something that needs to be fixed now? I mean, the turnovers do, but you got lulled to sleep to some extent, because for 2.5 quarters, it looked pretty good.
It did. The offense, especially the defense too, for that matter, Alan, looked very good for about 2.5 quarters. Would have liked to have seen some more big plays. I think Brian alluded to that on the defensive side of the ball. Just 1 sack. I think there were only 6 tackles for loss. Of course, no turnovers. So Brian always talks about explosive chunk plays on offense. Conversely, the defense needs this explosive plays, those being, like I said, sacks, tackles for loss, negative plays, and turnovers. The defense needs to produce more of those. Now, offensively, Alan, a lot could have been solved, I think, if they could have run the football better, among other things. But for me, it always starts with the ground game. Purdue only had 96 yards rushing on 29 carries, 3.3 yards per carry. And the second leading rusher for Purdue was quarterback Elijah Sinlar, 6'4", 225-pound quarterback with a bad knee. So again, we all know the scrutiny the offensive line was under as 2019 dawned. I think it did okay. The coaching staff seemed to be relatively pleased. They know there's room for improvement, but again, that was Nevada, a Mountain West team, plays a 3-3-5 stack defense. I thought Purdue could have pushed those guys around, had a big rushing game. It didn't happen. Here comes Vanderbilt, of course, more talent. How will the line perform now, and can this rushing game get more push to allow even more room for that passing game to operate?
You know, Brian, you talked, and it's well said, but the parallels, it was just a game, but even in the Brom era, you've had Rutgers in 17, which you just didn't play well. Eastern Michigan last year, a game you should have won, you didn't. And then this one against Nevada in a game that you should have won. What do you draw from that? Again, it's past history, past players, but is this something that this program needs to get over sooner than later, or how do you view that?
Well, I don't think, anything's fundamentally broken here. I think that, you have a program that's built around offense, and you have a program that's built around big play offense, not necessarily ball control offense. When you get to a fourth quarter, you have a lead, you want the clock running, you want possession of the football. This is not going to be, as I said in my column the other day, there's a reason that 14-0 deficits to Wisconsin for the better part of a generation have been a death sentence for opponents, is because the style of play, where it's really physical, it's ball control offense. Purdue, in the fourth quarter, when you have to control the ball, and you're not built from an offensive line perspective at this stage of the program to just line up and run the ball on people, what you want to do in those situations. You have to put the ball in the air. When you do that, you drop a ball on first down. That's 20 seconds. It doesn't come off the clock. And that's the difference between 2nd and 5 and 2nd and 10. Then all of a sudden you're behind the sticks. You're punting the ball away. It's not a new issue either. Historically, Purdue has been that program that hasn't necessarily been that we're going to kill everyone at the line of scrimmage and we're just going to get our 3 yards every single time we hand the ball off and just keep the clock moving, keep the first downs moving. It's just they're not necessarily built for that style. When Purdue was most effective at Nevada offensively, they were doing it largely with tempo. Now, when you have the same 5 offensive linemen on the field, all 82 snaps, you're playing at 4,500 feet, the fourth quarter is very different than the first quarter. Too. So I think that bears mentioning. But also in that situation, you don't want to be going tempo. You just want to be able to just make simple football plays, so to speak. And that's just not something that Purdue at this stage is necessarily built to do. And I think Purdue could have done a lot of things differently on both sides of the ball. Obviously, they'll be the first to tell you that. But I also think that it's not necessarily compatible with what Purdue is at this stage.
Yeah. Montrell, though, is a 2001 against Indiana when Joe Tiller said just make a yard. And that has been you're right, it's been a common theme of the program. They lose to Indiana in that game and can't make a yard and when they needed to. That hasn't always been the case, but it has been a bugaboo of the program. And it is, if you're not the Power 5 type, not Power 5, the elite of the Power 5, sometimes that's the case. You have an Achilles heel or something that you're always going to have to overcome. All right, Tom, when you look at the running back situation, obviously Xander Horvath did well, I thought, in the first half. Ran north and south for the most part when he needed to. Purdue unable to do much of that in the second half. Do you think, and it's hard to know because of what the coach talked about this week, but more King DeRue this week? Do you have any inkling of what might happen at that position?
Yeah, I asked Jeff Brom specifically about that Thursday. Will we see more King DeRue on Saturday come high noon in Ross-Ade Stadium? He said yes, they would love to give King more opportunities. He said the game, his head is still spinning. He's still trying to get caught up to the speed of the college game. But again, Brom talked about all the freshmen. They'd like to get all these guys in the game. And I went back and looked at the participation chart for the Nevada game, and I counted, I think, 19 true or redshirt freshmen who took part in that game. So we could see more moving forward. It'll be interesting to see how many freshmen continue to get their baptism here in September. We could see some of the tight ends, Brian.
Right.
Of course, Darius Pittman has left the program. That will obviously push up the depth chart a couple of true freshman, tight ends, Garrett Miller and Kyle Bilodeau. So again, this roster could get even younger and younger moving forward.
Yeah, and you obviously follow those guys in recruiting on the front end. What both Miller and Bilodeau,
Yeah.
capable guys, and
Well,
guys that can play.
To a larger point, this is the good problem to have that Purdue has, and that's that this 2019 recruiting class is really good, and it's really deep, and there's a lot of guys in this program who are going to play a lot of football at Purdue. They're going to be the foundation of this program moving forward. But right now, they're 18, 19 years old, and
Yeah.
when your best players, your most talented players, and you have to have your best talent on the field, are 18 and 19 years old, you're going to have to play through some things. You're going to have to play through their mistakes. You know, Purdue didn't lose that game on Friday night because they were playing a lot of young guys.
Yeah.
A lot of the mistakes that were made by guys who've been out there before. But there are going to be times where a freshman blows a coverage, a freshman overruns a play, a freshman runs the wrong route, a freshman fumbles, a freshman does whatever freshmen, are expected to do. And that's just going to be part of Purdue's story this year. Is they are going to be very young at a lot of positions. Right now, they're probably going to get younger. Because you're going to have to play some tight ends. I think you're going to probably see the freshman receivers maybe a little bit more. Stuff's going to happen, and Purdue's just going to have to be that much better because what the ultimate payout from all of this is probably going to be pretty good.
Yeah, you wrote a story, Tom, on Ahmad Anderson, and he's a, for lack of a better term, he's a wily veteran. I know he's only a redshirt, but compared in age to all the freshman receivers. But he came in and did six catches, 60 yards, did the job. How do you assess where he continues to fit in? Will he be that bit of stability in that in that position, or how do you view that?
Well, I think we'll see, like Brian talked about, and even Coach Braun mentioned it on Thursday as well. He expects David Bell, Milton Wright, to play more and more moving forward. So that's going to mean some snaps for some of these other wide receivers. Could come at the expense of an Ahmad Anderson Jr. or a Jared Sparks. But again, I thought Ahmad Anderson acquitted himself well in his debut. Like you said, 6 catches for 60 yards. It's a receiver position where they like to rotate guys. They have the personnel to rotate. A lot of talent, a lot of competition, and that makes everybody else better, obviously. But to me, I know it's a storyline maybe some people want to see dropped, but for a second game in a row, we're going to see Nick Holt in the press box.
Yeah.
And I surveyed all the Big Ten sports information offices this week just to ask them, where is your defensive coordinator position during games? And Alan, of the 14 schools, only 2 have their defensive coordinator in the press box, Purdue and Minnesota.
Doesn't matter, though. And I know you guys don't necessarily agree. I don't know if we'd say agree, but you have a different view of it.
Everything that happened in Reno Friday night happened last year too. So I mean, if we're looking for causation in terms of why something happened, that's different. So, but I don't necessarily know. Purdue was not very good against the pass last year. The point Jeff Brom makes about field of vision on the field stands to reason a little bit. And at the end of the day, Purdue wasn't very good on defense last year. Now, they were young, obviously, but they weren't very good. And trying something different to address a problem seems like a reasonable move to make. Now, whether they stick with it or not, we'll obviously see. But, I don't know if Nick Holt is being punished for something by being banished from the press box or anything like that. I think they're just trying something new.
Yeah.
I'm just bringing
Yeah,
it
no,
up.
no, you're just stating the
Bringing it up.
facts. I know, and I get that.
You know,
And I'm going to take not a different view. I do like, you see it around college football. I think fans like to see that crazy defensive coordinator cheering his team on and almost willing them. And I'm sure that some of the rationale as well, if he'd have been there, they wouldn't have collapsed. And yet they collapsed defensively. A lot of it had to do with the fact that the turnovers kept them on the field a lot, and maybe the altitude and all that kind of stuff. I think if you're paying Jeff Brom what you're paying him, he's got to make these decisions and live with them, and you have to assume, and I do assume that he's doing it for the best thing that he can get, so his program can move forward and get wins, not lose games like he did like his team did against Nevada. That was an interesting thing. I thought it was interesting that he made a comment this week about, hey, the rest of the schedule, Nevada's the least talented team, we being Purdue, is going to play. I mean, It's still, Brian. You got 11. You got 11 games. And I know Illinois has only played one so far, but you're not going to have any cakewalks from this point forward.
Right, but how often the last 2 years has Purdue been the more talented team on the field, and how many games have they won?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one factor that goes into, not just football, but
Yeah.
sports at this level in general. The more talented team doesn't always win. And, I mean, we just saw that firsthand with Purdue, because Purdue, yes, has significantly more talent than the team it just lost to. Purdue will play opponents who has more talent, Ohio State or Purdue.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw what happened in that game last year. Who has more talent, Auburn or Purdue? You saw what happened in that game as well. We'll see.
Yeah.
Obviously Purdue is not going to be the most talented team on the field in every single game it plays this year. That's not new in any way, shape, or form. And Purdue's been competitive at worst under those circumstances, and now it's just sort of the same task ahead, I guess.
Tomorrow, obviously, will be an emotional day for the Trent family and for everybody that's been touched by that, which is just about everybody in the country, really. Tyler Trent would have been 21 tomorrow. We'll be dedicating the T2 gate. Tom, I know you'll be covering that, but it has had an impact on Jeff Brom and the Purdue Center for Cancer Research, all the things that have gone into hammer down cancer. Any factor tomorrow? I mean, you don't necessarily need to have more emotion, but it will be something that I think the coaching staff will talk about. So.
Oh yeah, I think they are gonna hand out some rally towels, I think, as well. If you make donations.
Yeah.
And I think there's a plan to sing "Happy Birthday" to Tyler Trent, I believe, at the end of the first quarter as well. So yeah, it's going to be emotional, and I'm sure that's going to charge the crowd up and charge the team up to a degree on Saturday. As you said, Al, he meant so much.
Yeah.
Not just to the Purdue community, but to the nation, just with the way he conducted himself in such a selfless fashion, how he stared down his adverse situation with a lot of courage and strength, and was still more worried about raising money than anything else, and raising awareness about cancer. It's really impressive. So you're right. I'm sure it's going to be a big jolt emotionally for everybody in that stadium tomorrow.
Yeah, for all of us, the three of us that are parents, it's hard to imagine that the 21st birthday will not be a celebration tomorrow, but it certainly will be a moment to, and certainly the Trent's family has been pretty stoic on this whole thing, but also have had the courage to be front and center. I think you can't help but to be impressed by that. It'll be a difficult day, but also be maybe an important day of support. All right, Brian, on the last thing, and I'll ask for both of you guys. I know our predictions will go up on the site here in a bit. Tell me what without giving the final score, but what do you think we'll see tomorrow?
Well, this sets up like Boston College last year.
Yeah, interesting.
You look like you're kind of down and out. A team comes in here with more talent, a team that you can make one-dimensional from a defensive perspective. When you look at what Purdue's done defensively under this coaching staff, when they just got to worry about the run, they've been pretty good. When they encounter balance of any meaning, that's when things get a little bit dicey. Vanderbilt has a good running back. I know they've got at least one good offensive lineman who was productive against Georgia in the running game. Can they throw the football? Purdue has to make them find out, because if they can make them throw, and we don't know if Vanderbilt can, it just sets up like a situation where Purdue can tee off on the run like they did against Boston College last year, stifle that simply with numbers, simply with emphasis, and then make them beat you in an area of the game where they're not well designed or well suited to beat you. It just seems to me like it's kind of setting up that way. And again, I'll repeat what I said before. I think Purdue is the same team it was before it lost to Nevada. I think they're good. I think they're good enough to win 7 or 8 games. I said before the season maybe as many as 8. Now, one of those would have been Nevada, so I guess I have to change that to 7. But I think Purdue's fine here. I think they just lost a game they should have won, and it happens. And I think they're going to be a very competitive team the rest of the way, and I think they stack up pretty well.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
Tom Riley Neal did not have a big day passing, but he has some weapons. So I mean, that's obviously at tight end, at receiver. I mean, Vandy does have some talent. it's a skill position.
Yeah, Pinckney, the tight end, is an NFL tight end, I'm told.
Yeah.
The wide receiver is very good, Allen.
Yeah.
Keyshawn Vaughn, of course, Purdue fans may want to forget.
Yeah.
2015, when he was a member of the Illinois Fighting Illini, came into Ross-Ade Stadium and ran for, I think, 180 yards.
Right.
He's a talent, but like Brian said, I think he summed it up well. You have to throw the game into Riley Neal's lap
Yeah.
and make him beat you. Hats off if he does. I don't think Vandy's got the offense to trade points with Purdue. It's going to be so important. It always is important to get a lead, but in this game more so than any. Purdue gets a lead, then really forces Vandy's hand from a passing game standpoint. And maybe that defense can dial up some pressure, get after Neal, maybe get 4 or 5 sacks, maybe a couple turnovers, and there you go. So again, I think you give it the edge to Purdue, the sense of urgency, the edge of quarterback. I think it's going to help them as well. So again, you hate to call this a must-win, right? But you don't want to start 0-2. But I like the way the things stack up for Purdue coming into tomorrow.
All right. Well, check for the predictions on the site. They'll be posted around the 3 o'clock time frame as well. All right. We're going to take a short break, and we'll bring in Brian for segment 2, talk a little bit of recruiting, men's basketball, and whatever else Brian wants to talk about. But we'll hit that. And then Gene Keady will join us in segment 3.
Space heaters.
Space heaters. He wants a space heater because it's cold in here. We'll do that. We have to break the WLFI rules to do that. But we'll be back in a couple minutes. And stay tuned as we have more to come on Golden Black Live.